Welcome back, friends. Um, yes, it's a relationship built on love and trust. And so I think maybe we can do a compare and contrasting um, with Brother Lawrence because Brother Lawrence will overlap Father Ducassade for about 40 years in the same country of France. I don't know if they knew each other, but they would have, I think they would have come across similar inspirations. So Cassad, like Brother Lawrence, was accused of quietism, especially in regards to Fenelon and Madame Guyon. Quietism, finally, in the strictest acceptation, that's quite the word, acceptation, that's a word that didn't get flagged, of the term, is the doctrine put forth and defended in the 17th century by Malonus and Prutici. Out of their teaching developed the less radical form as semi-quietism, whose principal advocate was Fenelon and Madame Guyon. All these varieties of quietism insist with more or less emphasis on interior passivity as the essential condition of perfection. And all have been proscribed, which means anathematized, condemned by, in very explicit terms, by the church. Brother Lawrence, like Father de Caussade, saw each instance of his life. So we're going straight into what Sarah said. Each instance of his life as an encounter with God, irrespective of whether he was in the chapel or mending sandals. Both men come from a robust spiritual formation, albeit differently. There is a presupposition of formation, prayer life, and devotion for both men. And both are French, with a nod to the title France, being the eldest daughter of the church. Word du Caussade would use the phrase divine providence. Brother Lawrence would use presence of God. That personal union with God, the bosom of God. So these would be synonyms for brother. Brother Lawrence's works was suppressed, like the Jesuits, within France, causing it to explode through the rest of Europe. And maybe as a finish off of historical considerations, and then we'll go into the fun part, the quotes. The intended audience was the nuns of the Visitation in Nancy, France. Inez de Caussade was the spiritual director to the nuns. There was another presupposition for those nuns was they were formed in the faith. They were desirous, so they were formed in the faith, desirous of a virtuous life, and it was not for a neophyte. You are assuming that we're talking to someone who has a developed prayer life, a mature Christian, those leading a spiritual life.
Right, because I mean, it is, so, when we talk about, virtue, right? Virtue is not, there's no opposite of virtue, right? Virtue is in the center of a circle of vices. And so consequently, to really be able to, there's always going to be a counterfeit, right? Satan is very, very good. He cannot create anything, but he is very, very capable of counterfeiting what is already created. And any time that he can get you to move out from the center of that circle of virtue, he's content because he's pulling you toward vice. And that is why within this book, right, within this concept of both living in the presence of God that was given to us by Brother Lawrence, and also this abandonment or surrendering to divine providence, which is given to us by Jean-Pierre de Caussade, because both lives both ideals are truly virtuous, right? These are, when you live authentically what they are instructing you to do, you are living a habit of virtue. It's an interior virtue that is going to obviously overflow into an exterior life. But it's very, like, as you were saying, this quietism, it's very easy to accuse someone when you don't have a true understanding of the virtue residing in the center, right? These counterfeits are easily, for the person who is not aware of them, shall we say, it's very easy to tilt either, like you said, toward that fatalistic approach of God, where, okay, fine, I just abandon myself to whatever happens, and now whatever happens, that must be God's will. And then, when you find yourself in the brothel and you're like, well, that's what God willed for me right now. I mean, that's obviously not at all what we would be talking about. Or in the same sense where, this quietism can also bring you into that same type of a life. Well, this is where God wants me to go because that's where I'm going, right? I mean, so you can you can allow your appetite to direct the intellect very, very easily with these counterfeits. But the authenticness of this particular virtue is that the abandonment resides in your will, daily surrendering to God. But I mean, obviously, you're living a life of virtue, right? So the chances are that when you're living that life of virtue, we know that God can't be outdone in generosity. So the things that are going to befall you, quote unquote, in terms of like this concept of fate, which I think Boethius does a good job of explaining what it means to be, impacted by fate, right? Things do happen, but the closer that you are to God, the more that you understand his hand in it. And so this authentic abandonment is always going to be you surrendering your will through virtue and through good habit, not just whatever happens is what happens. It's not that. And you really have to make sure, like you had said, these nuns and Father Jean-Pierre de Caussade, and even Brother Lawrence, all of them understood first the life of virtue and how they were able to live it separated from a life of vice before they were able to really pursue this level of depth through the intellectual life.
That's right. That's right. All right, my friends. We'll pick up in the next episode with some selected quotes. As Sarah said, as she rightly said, this is not a book that you're going to sit down, at least I didn't find it that way, where you're going to just finish it off in a day. I mean, you're going to be able to do some glance work at it and that sort of thing if you've got a report or show to present on it. But it's really one best savored slowly, like a fine wine, a rich piece of chocolate. You just need to savor it. So we'll pull out some selected quotes and do just that. Till then, my friends, Fide Sriracha.